morning, everyone. Thanks for joining the session. My name is Swati Khandelwal, and I'm the founder of Exemis Health. And we started COVID Jankari as an initiative under Exemis Health. We started COVID Jankari with the sole intention of providing validated information, resources, and on ground support to those in distress during this pandemic. Over the last month, when we started with one WhatsApp group, suddenly the information and the information was so much required that it soon converted it more than 100 groups and over 25,000 active community members. We get over 500 queries per minute to serve better, which which we are catering with the help of volunteers. And we have right now more than 250 volunteers who are catering and validating this information day and night for everyone who wants, a lot of information on these groups. To better organize these volumes, we are building a tech-led crowdsourced matching platform. You can check the beta version at covidjankari.in. Apart from providing information, ration food supplies to the needy, we have also started a dedicated teleconsultation channel for our community members by tying up with a pool of doctors across India. While our objective is to improve accessibility for everyone, we are also looking to subsidize the consultation fee for the people in need. Also, we have tied up with Zomato's Feeding India initiative to serve food for the street dwellers and animals during lockdown. Today, I welcome you to Health Jankari session, wherein we will bring you with top doctors and healthcare practitioners across the world to help break the myths around COVID, as well as present facts from those who matter the most, our doctors. The intent of these free for all session is to increase awareness as to address all the queries around the disease. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat box and we'll try to address them during the session today. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Daljit Kaur, founder of Dawn Healthy Minds, a mental health expert and a psychiatrist, to share her thoughts around the myths of COVID today. I also welcome our moderators, Ms. Apurva and Ms. Sumiran, to host the session. Let's talk mental health today. Thank you. Over to you, Apurva.
Apurva will be joining shortly.
Sumiran, you can take it up.
Yeah, sure. So I welcome Doctor. I'll just put on a spotlight for everyone to see. Hello, Doctor. Hi. Um, Dr. Diljit Kaur is the founder of Dawn Healthy Minds and is an experienced consultant psychiatrist, and having spent 14 years in the field of psychiatry, she feels very strongly about creating reforms in the field of healthcare and wishes to express her skills and visions in India. And she has recently been awarded Women Leadership Award by Telangana Brand Awards for creating visibility of mental health and her own brand. So I would like to first ask the doctor to introduce herself.
Okay, thank you, Sumiran, and thanks, Exemis Health. It's a very relevant topic, and I'm so glad I'm here to talk about this. I would like to quickly go through, my initiative, just a couple of minutes. So my initiative is Dawn Healthy Minds. It's an initiative for mental health education and training. So what we do is, other than the normal consultations and counseling for individuals, I also organize workshops and training for organizations, corporates, communities, hospitals, academic institutions like schools, colleges, and so on. So although in this pandemic, we've not been able to do too many workshops, but due to the increase in the mental health issues, I've been able to offer a lot of clinical consultations and counselings. I've also done lots of webinars regarding this topic to the corporates and to the general public as well. So I'm really glad to be here, and I'll just, take your questions as they come along.
Thank you, doctor. So I'll just Apurva also. and add her to the spotlight as well.
Okay. It was a really, a nice experience, Doctor, to have connected with you. And we are all here for the cause. So we have been seeing this, right? That during the pandemic, a lot of people have had loss of their economic income, loss of their loved ones, and they're dealing with mental health issues. So there are certain myths about mental health that we would like to burst, and then we will proceed with the Q&A, and the third section would be the audience live Q&A session that Sumiran would be conducting. Thank you. So first, myth or fact: everyone who goes for therapy must be on medication. What is your take about that?
Okay. Now, this whole pandemic has brought, a lot of mental health issues. It has dramatically impacted people's mental health and behavior. So when we talk about mental health services, yes, there is a, broad spectrum there. You're talking about normal counseling services. You're talking about therapy from a clinical psychologist, which is slightly different from the counseling services. And then you have a psychiatrist. So first, I think we just, I'll take a minute to explain. So you got a psychiatrist who is a doctor and, is able to not only counsel you, but also able to give you medication if required. So the psychiatrist is the one who actually does the diagnosis. Now, few psychiatrists only do the medication part, but some of them who are keen into it also do the counseling, and I'm one of them. Now, maybe a psychiatrist can't do all types of counseling because, psychology and clinical psychology, it's a proper degree, and obviously they take years into doing that. So you have clinical psychologists who are able to do the assessments and are able to complement the diagnostic part for the ones who require it. They are able to do personality assessments. They are able to give you therapy. Again, there are different kinds of therapy like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which might be used in terms of anxiety, grief, OCD, and so on. There are psychodynamic therapy, which are longer kind of therapy. It helps people who've had, say, issues from childhood and attachment issues or abuse, or lots of things, trauma and all in their life, and that has impacted in their personality later on. And then third comes just the counselor or the counseling services. Now, when people do these counseling degrees, they can either choose to do general counseling or they can specialize into different ones. So some counselors might choose to work with schools and colleges. So it's more of educational, counselors or supportive counselors there. Others might choose particular topic, like maybe they want to work with women or, with children or with the elderly population, so on. So I just wanted you to understand how, the framework works. So your question was about therapy. Yeah. So everyone who must go for therapy must be on medication? No. Although I am a consultant psychiatrist trained from the UK and also working in India now, I am of the view that when someone has an issue, first we have to put effort into trying to manage it with a non-medical intervention if required, if possible. So something like counseling, depression, stress, grief and all, I would suggest going for counseling services first. So when we talk about therapy, it's any kind of counseling that we discuss. However, now who decides whether it is therapy or medication or so? So the initial assessment needs to always happen through a psychiatrist. They can then formulate and tell you, well, this person can manage just by counseling. We don't need medication at this point, in which case they refer them to counseling. Again, it is very personalized, isn't it? With COVID, we are seeing a lot of people struggling. So it could be that there's been a loss in the family, there's been a bereavement and family is really struggling. So their counseling is going to be slightly different from someone, say, who's had COVID and has now developed this extreme anxiety about their own health and a fear of death, and also their counseling is going to be different. So my answer is therapy doesn't always have to be with medication, but there are a lot of conditions within the mental health where medication and therapy are done together. So we'll come to it when we talk about those conditions.
Okay. So the next question is, as you said, that there are different ways you tackle different kinds of patients. So some people think mental health illness or depression, it's only a phase and it is done just for attention. It's an attention seeking habit. What is your take on that?
I think you have to challenge the perspective, because how are we so confident that it's not a mental health issue? I wouldn't say people don't do it for attention seeking. There are few things like malingering and all where people just fake up those things to get attention, but that's really rare. So unless a person is actually assessed and the doctor says this is not mental health issue, so you have to consider it as an issue unless proved otherwise. And I think the general public is not in a position to decide that. It will have to be an assessment by a psychiatrist.
Okay. So what kind of people are affected by mental illness? Are children also affected?
Yes, definitely. Children have lots of issues. I mean, anxiety and depression, that's very commonly seen in children. If you start from the toddlers and so on, there are conditions within the child psychiatry like autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, that is ADHD, behavioral issues. So that is in the younger age group, say below 10 or so. And in adolescents and teenagers, the anxiety is very prominent. There might be issues from school like bullying and so on, or social anxiety that becomes prominent. Now, again, I would like to highlight, if someone has a mental health issue, does not mean that, it's just that you take to a doctor and they start you on medication. So I don't think that should hold back the parents to take their children to doctors, because, it's more about a formulation and offering them what is, available and what is required at that stage. So, and there are lots of other conditions as well. Something like, so if you're talking about the youngsters, say 16, 17 and so on, many severe and enduring mental health illnesses can also start at that point. So I think if there is any doubt and any symptoms come up, please go and get them assessed. It might be something very simple that can be dealt then and then, because early intervention is the key. When you see some early signs, that is when you need to act. You do not leave it till things get worse and then start looking for help.
So, doctor, when you say early signs, can you please let us know what signs are we talking about here? What things parents should look into their children or teenagers, like you have mentioned? Can you give a brief about those early signs?
Yeah, so I'll quickly touch upon it, because obviously different conditions would have different kind of symptoms. But if you have so if we go to the younger category, say around 6, 7 and below that, then you would be noticing is the child, has the child developed, like all the milestones have come on time, like speech and so on. Is the speech regressing? Is the child actually interacting with others, of their age? And when they are in school or preschool, are there any issues within the school? Is the child able to concentrate and pay attention or not? So if there is a feedback from school that the child is sitting just by themselves and not focusing much, then you have to start worrying. If the child's not spoken or started babbling, but the speech is regressed and is not speaking now, say at age 2, 3, then you directly take them to a psychiatrist for assessment. In ADHD, it's about any child hyperactive. So yes, kids can be naughty. They can, do lots of things, and that's fine. But when you feel that it's going out of control and, the school is having issues, other children and their parents are having issues, you send them to a neighbor, and then everyone seems to complain that your child is not sitting in one place, is being very naughty, troubling everyone. And you also notice that at home, that, you just are losing out.
Just sorry to interrupt you. So, what I understand, these are the general symptoms which we can see in different age group at any point of time.
Yeah.
But if we focus more on COVID, like from almost last 2 years, students are not going to school or colleges. There are examinations which are cancelled now. People in their houses have got COVID. Some people have lost their loved ones as well. There are kids who have lost both the parents.
Yeah.
So in these cases, what are those symptoms that the other family members or friends should note to understand that child might go into depression or has anxiety issues? If we just talk about these last 2 years and first wave and second wave of COVID.
Yeah. So first thing is, do not underestimate children. because, with the COVID, there are lots of discussions happening at home. Family members are being admitted or having COVID. So what we tend to do is we are so, engrossed in our own issues that we just tend to leave the children, assuming they're just playing and all, but they're hearing all these things, So I think the first thing to happen is a proper communication with the children, sit down and explain to them what's happening, because the uncertainty is going to make kids feel very anxious. Someone needs, because suppose a parent goes to the hospital, the kid's now going to assume that my parent is going to die because of COVID. They might not know that, it is treatable and there are lots of things being done. So please address the anxieties of children. Very, proper channelized communication needs to be done. Yes, unfortunately, many children are losing their parents and family members. So it is, grief is very common now. I mean, grief, everyone's going to face grief, but there are different stages to grief. So if someone's lost, a parent or a family member, it is understandable. There is going to be a phase where the child is sad or the family members are sad. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call that as depression. So I think we have to normalize, we have to allow people to go through those emotions, but give a certain time. When you feel there is a lot of neglect in terms of the child not eating well, not sitting with people, not smiling, just changing their personality altogether and making excuses just to be by themselves, not sleeping well and so on, that is the time I think we have to just immediately act on it and get them some help. It might be that they might need some medication, but it might be much simpler than that, as in the family might be counseled how to cope with that situation and so on. So yes, kids can have depression, but again, they can just be sad and might need some help. So that needs to be looked into. The biological symptoms are loss in appetite, loss in sleep, loss in concentration, not enjoying things that they like to do. Mood, when people are depressed or kids are depressed, mood doesn't necessarily have to be just sitting and crying. It can be irritability, anger, outbursts, and so on. So if there is a change in personality, please take a professional help.
All right. So a lot of people have been away from their families, like they were on a tour and the lockdown caused them to be away from their families. So such people are also running into mental health, anxiety issues. So what can they do to, overcome this? It's a general question for COVID.
Yeah. So as we discussed, pandemic is impacted everyone. People have lost jobs, people are away from their family. Family dynamics have changed, kids are out, not necessarily out of school. I mean, it's online school and they are at home. So everyone seems to be in a different situation and they don't know what to do because we've never come across similar kind of situation before. I would say, first of all, I would just quickly like to mention that there are few skills that at least the youngsters need to learn in terms of adapting to this new mindset. We've never faced this kind of situation, so resilience is something everyone needs to learn, and they need to focus on better coping strategies. First of all, I would say look after yourself, look after your own physical health, mental health, and then start helping others. It's always nice to keep yourself busy, have a structure to the day, because if you're free, then there's so much going on in the media and negativity going around that you might just sit down and ruminate about all the bad feelings you had or bad things that have happened in the past or so. Many people, because they don't know what else to do, are ending up, because of boredom or so, they're ending up taking lots of alcohol or smoking a lot and so on. Again, what I'm trying to say is, please stay away from the bad habits. It is time to support each other. So find out, if you've got lots of time, start volunteering into different projects, try to help people develop some better coping strategies. You could start doing some yoga classes, meditation, general walking and so on. So I think it's just about, focusing on your physiological functioning and psychological functioning as well, and developing your own strategies.
All right. So is there a relationship between your economic and social status with mental health? Because a lot of people have lost jobs. So they are getting into depression. Right. So is there a relationship between the two?
Not necessary. When we talk about mental health, we look into biopsychosocial model. So yes, environment does play a role. If you're faced to any situation, so people can have issues like adjustment disorder. Suppose I lose a family member, I am going to feel sad. I'm probably not going to be able to focus on my, career, my work, and so on. Equally, if someone loses a job, they are going to have their financial crisis. They're going to have lots of worries about how to do, and they might end up feeling sad or anxious. So yes, environment does play a role, and every economic situation might have their own challenges. But there is another component in terms of biological, wherein there are changes in the neurochemicals in your brain and all, and they also contribute to someone actually having mental health or not. So it's not purely the environment, but yes, it does play a role. And if it is more of an adjustment issue, I think that can be helped even more just by counseling or so on.
My next question is, we have taken a lot of precautions for COVID, like washing our hands twice a day, or like more every time. So is this a symptom of OCD, or is it just being very particular about COVID? Because a lot of people are doing it very extensively.
Yeah. I would like to say that there have been lots of new OCD cases in the COVID time. And the people who had OCD in the past and who were doing fine, they've also worsened because now this is what was expected from people, to be checking on things and, washing your hands and so on. I have seen lots of people, doing it in extremes, just using sanitizer and all every 5 minutes as well, whereas there is no reason, and they are doing that. So when we do these things, these are compulsions, you're feeling compelled to wash your hand or sanitize it over and over, and that is due to a thought in your mind. So the obsession is actually a thought. If I don't do this, I might have COVID. If I don't do this, I might pass on this contamination to my family members, and they worry like that. So I think part of the behavior, if you're doing it within the limits, this was expected from all of us in terms of personal hygiene, and I think that's fine. But please refrain yourself from going to the extremes. And if you find yourself doing it in extremes, just give it a thought. Maybe you have developed anxiety. I have seen lots of people who stop going out of the house altogether, or if they're getting something, they're keeping it out for days and days. So I think there's a very thin line which might, if it's not very obvious, then it might need an assessment by a professional to say if this is just a normal behavior or it's going towards anxiety or OCD.
For someone who is combating depression or a mental health issue, how can their family members support them? Like virtually also, can they support them?
For people who've already had anxiety or depression in the past, what the family members can do is probably support them in terms of getting their regular follow-ups. Due to the lockdown, many people have stopped taking their regular medication because they've not been able to go down, or they didn't. And suppose, you're sitting there already feeling depressed, lacking in motivation. And last thing that would come to your mind is, oh no, I have to go in this lockdown, try to figure out where I could get this medication. And then not everyone might be tech savvy, so they might not realize, oh, there's a, online consultation that you could go through and all. So for someone with existing mental health conditions, families, please check on them and see that they are taking medication and they are doing fine. For others, it is about, being supportive and being available, because many people are just there by themselves. And I feel really sad, especially for the elderly, who probably got their children and all in states and everywhere, and obviously the children are also very concerned for them. But you also need some kind of physical presence, or at least that emotional touch. So if anyone, friends, family or so, where you feel they could do with a call every day, maybe a video call, because audio call is different. You don't get to see them, you don't get to observe and see their emotions and all. So I would suggest a video call every day for someone who's really struggling or being alone there. It might be the only thing they would have for that day, and they might be looking forward. That might cheer them, that might help them just carry on for the next day. So I think people can do that. I know there are various organizations, even yourselves, looks like there have been so many volunteers helping with food and so on. So basic needs need to be looked into. So I think everyone has to just do whatever basic is required.
So this is a different question. For people who are already on medication for mental health, is vaccination safe?
Yes, so there were a lot of queries for psychiatrists, as in, can I take medication and all? I've got lots of people asking, yes, please do take medication. Having a mental health issue or being on mental health medication is not a contraindication for vaccination, and everyone needs to be vaccinated so we can prevent, prevention is what we require at the time. So please, everyone go and get vaccinated. There are no concerns.
No concerns regarding mental health. Can vaccination prove to be fatal to your mental health? Maybe.
No.
No. Okay, that's great. What can some hobbies or skills that we can develop, as a general question, in the lockdown, that we can do to prevent running into mental health issues?
Yeah, I mean, as I told you, biopsychosocial. So environmental wise, whatever you can do, if you are going through a lot of stress, then you have to address the cause. What is the cause? If it is a relationship problem, address that. If it is something out of control, say, the illness or so, there's not much you can do. But wherever, so try to identify what things are under your control and what are not. And the ones you can do something, either you do it yourself or take someone's help in addressing those issues. Because feeling sad, having any anger, irritability, these are only presentation of something else going on. So the cause might be something else that definitely needs to be addressed. Yes, in your free time, I mean, it depends entirely on your personality. If you are someone who's more creative and you never got that much of time, you might want to get into reading new books or painting or drawing or listening to music, or actually learning a new instrument. I guess there are lots of online classes now that can help you with that. For someone who's more into spiritual or meditation and all, I again have seen lots of arts of living classes, meditation, mindfulness, and so on. For people who are into professional development, why, and some of them might have lost jobs for whatever reason, why don't you utilize this time and take on a few new modules and upskill yourself? And for others, maybe even for corporates or other people, employed people, as I was talking about different skills that people will need to learn, because we are not much into problem solving and all. So there are some core life skills that we all need to focus in terms of ability of problem solving, coping with stress and emotions, resilience, critical thinking, self-awareness, positive attitude, empathy, lots of things. So there are various self-help resources that you can use, on the online platform itself. There are lots of books also. So if you want, you can read those and do. Obviously, then there will be various workshops also that can be organized for that. So I think everyone has to sit down and make goals for themselves, short-term goals, long-term goals, depending on your personality, and start working. Because this is not a holiday. It's been going on for over a year. So all the honeymoon period, holiday period is over. Now is the time to focus on yourself and understanding that this is a different lifestyle now. The way we live, we think, we work, everything's changed now. So keeping in mind that we do not have control over the outside world, we just have to adapt ourselves and start upskilling ourselves.
Adapting ourselves to the new normal, right?
Yeah.
Also, if there is any question from the audience, Sumiran can take them now. We also have a small poll. We could take that. But Sumiran, are there any questions from the audience?
Hi, doctor. So there is one question by a person, and he says that his father was had COVID and was hospitalized for a long time, and now he has discharged. But now I think he has moved into dementia phase and remembering things from the partition from the 1950s and 60s, and when he was in Lahore. So is this an indication of mental health problem, and how, and though he has shown physical improvement, and how can he help, how the family members can be of help to them?
It's a very interesting question. So there is a difference between dementia and delirium. These are two different conditions. So dementia is a process wherein there is a global impairment in terms of not only your memory and thinking, lots of other things as well. What we have seen is many people who are especially so admitted in the ICU setting for COVID, they might go into a bit of confusional state, yeah, for a short term. And it might seem like they're not oriented to the time and place, they are not recognizing their family members. Now, we do not term that as dementia. That is delirium or confusional state. And it often happens when, there is a problem with the physical health, especially so in the elderly. Even something simple as a urinary infection, or now in these cases lung infection or so on, that can bring on this confusional state. Let me tell you, this is reversible. But depending on the person's situation, it might sometimes take few days to weeks or even months. Yeah. So
yeah, ma'am. Hi, this is my father. I'm Sandeep this side. Absolutely right. Actually, he contacted COVID on 1st of May. And you are absolutely right. Before that, he was absolutely only physical problem was there. But otherwise, mentally, he was quite sound. Just after taking so many heavy medicines, he was hospitalized, but he was not in ICU. But he was given, strong dose of steroids. After that, suddenly the condition deteriorated in the hospital only. Because what kind of condition is there in the hospital? They were not taking care, and rather he was forgetting things, and some bored boys physically assaulted him also. Because he was forgetting things, he was removing that oxygen mask. So that has entered his head, and he's very much frightened and afraid. That he was absolutely all right mentally.
Yeah. So, Mr. Sandeep, let me clarify a few things.
And you are right. This is a slight phase of confusion. He's a little bit confused. Sometimes he remembers okay, mera beta hai. Sometimes he forget everything. Who are you? Even he's forgetting his wife also of last 50 years.
In view of time, we'll not go further because it can be discussed one-to-one. But you brought up a very important issue here. I would like to address, myself being a doctor. So there are few medications. Yes, steroids are really important in COVID and they need to be given. But as I told you, sometimes they can bring about a change in the personality. Now, infection in itself and being in ICU with all those things, again, can bring on this confusion. I would not blame it on the medication or the doctors or not the proper care being given, because this is likely to be there due to the condition itself. Yeah, so we cannot say that the steroid was a high dose, that's why they got, or this was low dose, or this was not managed. This is a very common situation that can happen. We can call it as ICU psychosis, some people term it that, or delirium or confusional state. And as I'm telling you, it can happen to anyone without any pre-existing mental health conditions. But the good thing is this is reversible. So you definitely still need a psychiatrist to be involved at that point, so they can treat, because there will be some symptomatic treatment that is required, and gradually you will wean off. Dementia is different from delirium, but you would only reach to that stage, say a few months down the line, then you will again have, after regular follow-ups, you will have proper follow-up again to check, hopefully, that the delirium is not developing into some other mental health issues. But most of the times it is reversible and people come back to their own personality.
Thank you, doctor. So the next question we have is this: are women more prone to mental issues or depression, especially during these times, since they are wearing multiple hats and doing a lot of work, housework, kids, and their own career and managing work from home, etc.?
Yeah, so women, have their own issues, and children have their own, so there are different kind of conditions prominent in different sector. But now that we are talking specific about COVID, as we are all aware, women have probably ended up taking, a lot of roles, and the initial stress definitely would have been there. However, I would say, because this has been going on for so long now, people have kind of found their own ways of adjusting to it. I'm sure most of the male members in the houses, they have also started helping, and everyone's kind of now adapted to this new lifestyle, I guess. So just like anyone else, I think, all the environmental issues we've discussed in terms of loss of job or, too much stress and all, I would apply to similar kind of things. I wouldn't speak about anything specific here.
Okay.
So I have this question, so lactating. So usually when mothers are pregnant and they have a case of post pregnancy depression and lactating mothers, so are they also kind of at a greater risk because of these things for mental health, and given how COVID is impacting our lives?
COVID is definitely not sparing anyone. So yes, pregnant women can also be feeling depressed. If we imagine, someone would go, have all the family members around them around the time of delivery and have all the social support. I don't think a lot of that is going to happen, because most of the parents, especially the elderly, are, going to restrict themselves from moving out of the town and so on. So definitely there's going to be a lack of social support. There is likely chance of anxiety and depression going on, a bit higher. And there's no harm in asking for help. Even yesterday, I had someone who was, nearing the delivery time, and she was feeling quite low for the previous month, because it's a very sensitive time, lots of hormonal changes, your first pregnancy, first delivery, family not being around. So I think it definitely has an impact. And there are different ways, as I told you, counseling. And let me also tell you, there are lots of, medications for anxiety and depression as well that can be safely used in terms of pregnancy. Especially, we try to avoid the first part of pregnancy, the first 3 months, but after that, if there are issues, they can be used, and can also be used in breastfeeding mothers. So, help is available. It's just about awareness about that and seeking help.
The next question is, once we get into new normal, do you think coping with it would be challenging and lead to more mental issues, or will it be just as before?
I think there's already been an increase in mental health issues since the pandemic has been started, and it is going to cause, it has caused a lot of damage to people, not only in terms of making them feel anxious, scared of death and feeling depressed, feeling isolated, but also due to the socio-economic factors of, people have probably taken away all their savings for their admissions to the hospital. So the financial and economic impact is definitely there. I believe it's going to take a lot of time for people to, get adjusted. Whenever this pandemic goes away, it's still going to take few years for people go back to their things. So I think the mental health issues are not going anywhere. There is going to be a rise, and people should go and take help.
I have a question here. So you said it's the mental health has affected a lot of things, not only personal, but economic things also. Has it also affected relationships in some manner?
Yeah, definitely has. I mean, obviously, first and basic thing is people were not used to staying, with their family members throughout, and now everyone's in work from home situation. So maybe where people got away not gelling that well with their family members, because the family dynamic is very complicated. Some people get along well, some might not, and so on. And now you're ended up in a situation where everyone's together. So I'm not only talking about, grown-ups or, in-laws and things, but it's also about their own children. So many of them were in university, and because of the pandemic, they've come back. They are also not used to, being with in their family home all the time, because now they've grown up, they might be in their late 20s. And when they come back, their parents are still treating them like a 16, 17-year-old. And they're like, oh no, this is not what I want. So, I mean, it's the advantage is everyone's got a nice family time. So it's up to you how you want to see it and utilize it. But I would say that initial teething problems were definitely there. Hoping that now with a year and so on gone by, people have got adjusted to the fact, but it has been challenging for people in terms of relationships. Yes.
I have one question, is that how, whenever mental health issue arises, many people who are actually suffering from it are hesitant to accept it themselves. So, and as a side person or as a caregiver, how can I or anyone help them come to terms and ask them to seek help if we feel that they should? And especially in the time of COVID, since as you said, the rise in anxiety issues, especially between like pregnant women, postnatal depression, and they are all coming common. So how can we convince them?
Yeah. So first of all, we have to, as a society, try to destigmatize things. Even something like this, bringing up this topic today and discussing about it, we need to do more and more these kind of stuff, because the initial part is creating awareness. People need to know that, yes, these things are coming up. Someone who's never had any issues is feeling very anxious. It is disturbing their day-to-day life, and there is help available. I just need to go and take that help. But people are in denial. They think that no, everyone's going through the same situation. They underestimate or minimize that they might be doing a lot more hand washing or sanitizing. There's so many people who ended up, every day having palpitations or their BP is going high because they're worrying about things so much. But then they would hesitate going to a psychiatrist or so on. So I would say, if you don't want to go to a psychiatrist, please go to a physician. They can start help you. So the initial step can be go see your own family physician. They can do a lot of things for you, but do not put yourself at risk. If you notice a change in yourself, you need to go. And I'm sure, even all the physicians and everyone is aware of all the mental health issues. So if they felt the need, they would definitely direct them to a psychiatrist or at least do whatever they can do at their end.
So next question is, how do I talk to my children without about the coronavirus without making them anxious?
So what's that? Sorry, without?
How do I talk making them anxious? Yeah.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, clear and crisp communication. So if you never discussed it and all of a sudden you're trying to do it for the first time, you yourself might feel a bit anxious about it. But if there is a regular, information being passed, so there are lots of, as we're talking about the myths of psychiatry, actually there are so many misconceptions about corona itself. So, kids must have heard something from others or they must have watched news or so. So I think at least, once in 2 days or 3 days, just sit down with them and ask them, so much has been going on. Do you have some questions? Is something troubling you? Do you want me to discuss anything, or do you want me to give information, or you can just give basic updates, because they might or might not be interested, but at least ask them. If they have any doubts, then you clarify them. I think we have to prepare our kids with all these new skills I just spoke about. So I think it's okay, even if it makes them slightly anxious, they have to be aware of what's going around, because we see that kids are having to take up such major roles. There might be times where kids might be in a position of calling their family members for help, or calling emergency services. And also, I think as parents, let's stop treating them as really sensitive kids, and bring them with all these skills so they are resilient and bold enough.
So how can one develop resilience, like in kids especially? Like, what can we do?
I think that's a topic on its own, so it might be difficult to discuss that here, but there are lots of skills. So it's not like we are all just the way we are. There are lots of changes we can bring about in our own behavior. So there will be a different area to discuss about building resilience in kids, or building resilience in youngsters, or grown-ups. So I think there'll be a lot of school programs that would start working on that. It can happen at a family level. It can also happen as part of a school curriculum, that many schools need to be open about it, and get all these basic skills done as a regular part of the curriculum.
That's a great suggestion.
The next question is, what if I personally have an anxiety disorder already, and seeing the news coverage on COVID is triggering that, but at the same time, I also should be aware of what is happening around me to take necessary precautions. So how can I do that?
So it's not bad to look at the media, but I think there has to be a timeline you put in. I've probably mentioned in some other YouTube talk as well that, half an hour is a maximum probably you think and listen to about COVID. So yes, look at news, read newspaper, need to know what's happening around the world and what things are. And after that, because everyone needs to be updated, definitely. After that, you're not just sitting dwelling about all those things. Yes, if you are having an issue in terms of your health or your family members have it, please address. But if you're all fine, and then you don't need to be sitting there and worrying about COVID all the time. As we discussed earlier, there are different things or hobbies or ways you can keep yourself busy, and you need to put a structure to yourself. If you already have a pre-existing mental health condition, make sure that if you are on medication, please make sure that all that is followed up and you're on the right dose of medication. If you're under counseling, keep in contact with your therapist. Do not stop all that just because the COVID has come up. In fact, we need more and more of that, so we are all feeling stable in ourselves.
The next question is, how the present situation will affect the students considering their future, and how to overcome that when finally the situation improves.
So talking about children, is it? Yeah.
Specifically, I guess the 12th and 10th students who actually would want to enter the next phase of their life.
Yeah, I mean, it's already affected lots of children, isn't it? Maybe, children wanted to apply to universities, colleges, and many of them have got their exams cancelled. So they have to go by what their previous assessments and all. But I think it's about just telling them not to be disheartened, because everyone's in the same situation. So, but yes, then they are going to continue with their schooling, and it's probably going to be online for most of them for the coming year. I think schools have to look at lots of things. I was the other day talking to, I had a webinar at one of the universities, and I was talking about, peer contact, peer support that needs to be offered. So people and students need to feel open to talk about their issues. There have to be counselors within the school who can talk to you, and the information will also then have to be passed to the parents. So if there are any issue, parents, realize they have to pass it on to the school and all. So I think considering this as a new normal, school is going to adapt few changes. As parents, we have to adapt to few changes, and explaining to the kids that this is how it's going to be, and we'll try to do the best as we can in the current situation. So it's about just teaching them to make their goals and strive hard for their goals. We have seen lots of kids just ending up with gadgets all the time, and you don't want them to end up with gadget addiction. There has to be few activities that they have been given options to, and we'll have to just wait for the right time. I think in few places we've got lockdown now, otherwise there have been lots of activities like football coaches are going on in communities and so on. So hopefully that those things start coming back again, and kids are physically active, not just stuck with their gadgets, and just learn to strive towards their goals.
I have one question. Can I? So this was about, you said mental health in kids, right? So when we are stuck at home and we cannot have any physical exercise because we are told not to go out, is this something that we can do at home? Also, there are a lot of apps that we have been seeing, like Headspace, apps like these. Do they help in mental health?
Yes, I mean, I would not underestimate the technology, because not everyone might have access to a therapist or so. So there are lots of self-help resources, something like Headspace and many other apps, they might help you monitor your mood, track your mood, keep a journal and so on. And so definitely, whatever is there, go ahead and use it. Also, everyone being at home, the other thing, if you're talking in context of children, whatever indoor activities, like I encourage, all the families to spend at least half an hour to 45 minutes as a family time sitting and playing, even if it is just a board game or so. So everyone comes together. Most of the family meals try to have everyone at the table, because the common thing is, even if your parents are at the table, they are either with their laptop or mobile, and then kids just going to learn from your behaviors. So I think as a family, we have to, try to divide some time, try to organize well. So there is some family time together where each of you can speak to, each other. So I think lots of changes that have to be brought. Not only, it's easier to advise, but it's very hard to implement. So I think you have to be the role model yourself to teach your kids and others to follow that.
Thank you, Mom.
So I have a
Doctor,
question.
one thing. So while we were doing the session, we also had a poll running on different social media channels. So the question was, what are the possible reasons for not seeking clinical help in case of depression or anxiety? And the highest answer is fear of being judged. So what is your take on this? What message you want to communicate to people who are attending this session and watching on Facebook as well?
Yeah.
We would like to understand from you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. See, I think it's all associated to the stigma and mindset. So if I am today, so whoever's filled in the poll today, if they are at the receiving end, they might think that, they are going to be judged by others. But if they are at the other end, they might be the people who might judge others. So I think we have to start normalizing mental health issues, just like in our normal talks, we talk about, the day-to-day stuff and politics and all. We have to start talking, oh, how are you dealing with this? My dad was ill, I felt anxious, I felt palpitations, this, that. People hesitate to bring that topic because they feel that if they talk about those, they're either being judged as weak or not being able to manage. So these things need to start happening in normal conversations. And when your kids, your elders, your friends hear you talking that, and more than one person or few people talking on a regular basis, then they think it's okay. One day maybe your child will come and tell, oh, dad, that day that came onto the news, I felt so, worried, I could not sleep, or I was having these kind of thoughts, I was so scared, I was having these visions and all. And these are all normal things. Yeah, just having those things doesn't mean you end up with a psychiatrist and medication. But what I'm trying to tell you is, let's at least make a start. As I am again and again highlighting, just feeling sad doesn't have to be depression. Just worrying about things doesn't have to be anxiety. And it's okay to be anxious when there is a reason for you to feel anxious. Just you being anxious does not mean you are on anxiety medication. There are lots of ways you can cope with the anxiety. And even if it means that for a brief period, you have to be on anxiety medication, no big deal. I mean, there are lots of myths about psychiatric medication in itself, that once you start, you can't stop, you're on it for life. It's not the case. Please, we're not talking about cases like schizophrenia, bipolar, where possibly you have to be on a maintenance dose of medication for years. We're talking about conditions like depression, anxiety. In overseas, because I've been trained in the UK, most of the anxiety and depression cases are managed by the primary care level, that is by the general practitioner. And only where they have done everything like counseling and started some medication, it doesn't work, then it comes to a secondary care in terms of seeing psychiatrists. Obviously, in India, it's slightly different because I don't think the primary care physicians are trained so well into managing psychiatry, in their training. So if it is the case that we psychiatrists can help you with things like stress, anxiety, depression, please come and take that help. Do not judge psychiatrists as well. Not everyone's just going to end up, writing you on loads and loads of medication. There's so many other ways, we can help you.
So just to summarize what you said, that one thing is that there is some kind of taboo in talking about, mental health. And even if you are talking about someone and you are judging the other person, then it goes round and round. And the second message, what I understood from you, is that it is okay to express yourself. There will be emotions which you feel are, will make others feel you're weak or you're vulnerable, but it's okay to talk about it to people you like or you love or you care about, whether it is fear, sadness, anger, or anxiety, or it goes opposite, whether it is, love, care, or good emotions. So overall, probably in our ecosystem, that conversation or expression of emotion is slightly missing, and people try to put everything inside themselves and not coming out and expressing it, which further enhances the problem.
Yeah, and that's mainly because of fear of being judged, and that is what we have to work on. Just let's all of us start talking about it. Then it becomes the new normal. Now many of them are kind of getting used to the fact that yes, COVID is causing anxiety, so they are more open. They are like, oh, I've heard lots of people with COVID are feeling anxious, so it's okay, I am also feeling that. Yeah, so somewhere, managing anxiety, people are actually open to it now because they are thinking it's not due to a mental health issues, but it's probably secondary to COVID. That's fine, but it's still anxiety, and it needs
something is triggering it.
Yes. So I think let's all start talking about mental health issues.
One more question that I have is, I have seen in my family people who, are thinking that they have gotten into depression, self-medication, doing self-medication, prescribing themselves with pills that they had been given earlier. Is this the right thing to handle it, or should they first go to a counselor and seek help?
I think they should go to see, if you're in doubt about the diagnosis and whether the person needs medication or not, then I would suggest go see a psychiatrist. If it is something where you're struggling to deal with your emotions as a consequence of some things that happened in your life or in your family or so, then yes, you can go to a counselor. Please do not self-medicate. There are going to be few medication that might be addictive and it's not got anything to do purely with psychiatry. They can be used by various doctors. So do not get into the habit of self-medicating. Use medication only when required, and please take it in a proper prescribed way. So please go, consult a doctor.
Thank you, doctor.
I have one question, doctor. Since there's a rise of mental health cases, so even the doctors and mental health professionals like you are also increasing the caseload. So are they also being affected with certain problems? And so it's a curiosity question there.
I mean, doctors are really struggling. So I'm not talking just about the psychiatrists. I'm talking doctors in general, because they are the frontline workers there. They're having to go through so many emotions because they've probably never seen so many unwell patients at one time. And they might also be feeling helpless because they do not have control over everything. COVID is coming and surprising us. Earlier, we thought it was for elderly with comorbid situations, but then you're also seeing people in their 30s and 40s dying and they've not had any serious issues. So it's giving everyone, in some kind of surprises. And doctors also feel helpless. They want, so far it's been like, okay, doctor can do everything. Everyone thought the doctors were magicians. That doesn't seem to be the case. So for doctors to deal with the whole physical part of it, as in wearing PPEs and being there for long hours, that is a different issue. But psychologically as well, having to deal with that emotions going home and being scared to even spread the virus to their own family members. Many doctors don't even go home. They're staying separate, from their families because they have to go to work every day. Nurses as well. So, and then they are seeing probably many deaths. If I see one death, it's going to leave some impact on me. If they're seeing those continuously, and they are their own patients, you can imagine how much they might be struggling. So yes, some kind of psychological support for all doctors is also required. Not everyone might be asking for help, but many are also coming and talking to their peers and all. Some groups are there. Psychiatrists also are seeing a lot number of cases, but probably I guess they are still doing okay. But I think the main doctors who are in ICU, who are in pulmonology, physicians and all those things, it is having a very huge impact on them.
Yeah. So just one last question you've just got. Do organizations also need to employ psychologists and a psychiatrist in future to take care of their employees?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to the organizations. Either they employ, I think quite few organizations do have counselors. That is what I know. And, their staff are allowed to access that. I think there is a little bit of resistance, as I can see sometimes from the staff as well, to avail that. But many do use it effectively. So either the organizations can employ someone, or they can outsource it to someone who can come and do it for them. But yes, definitely, I think the mental health part for all the staff in all the organizations need to be addressed, because you can't just expect them to be dealing everything the right way just like before. It has brought on lots of changes, and this topic has definitely been very challenging, and all the organizations as a mandatory have to look into the mental health perspective.
Okay, thank you, doctor, for this very amazing session. So if anyone else has any questions, please, you can contact Dr. Daljit by their website. I put that in the chat, dawnhealthyminds.com. And ultimately, I would like to close the session by giving a salute to all our frontline workers, all doctors, psychiatrists, physicians, and everyone. Thank you. And at last, I would like to say to everyone, it's okay to not be okay and to seek help whenever you feel like it. And thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, especially doctor, taking out your time. You were on a vacation, you were still here, and you gave us your time, your intended expertise on this, and it was really good.
No, it's
Thank you
been
so
a
much.
pleasure. Thank you for, addressing this topic and bringing it up. More and more of us have to do that. And I didn't have to prepare anything. It's been fantastic because just being Q&As and, this is something I do on my regular basis. So it's been pleasure. You all are doing fantastic work. Carry on.
Thank you,
so much.
Doctor. Thank you for joining us today. It was a wonderful session. You could please reach out to Dr. Daljit if you have any issue. The link for her is in the chat. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Now we are ending the session. Thank you, doctor.